Welcome everyone to this narrated time-lapse of Paint a Kingfisher using pastels. This video demonstration will be my first painting on a paper called PastelMat, so I will be happy to share my experience with you as I begin using this product. Please subscribe here on YouTube to my channel if you haven't already. I have lots of content for you, and I love to share my tips and techniques in full detail without you having to join a Patreon channel. So I hope you enjoy this video of Paint a Kingfisher. I started with a light blue and found that when I did a test sample in the corner that it didn't blend well with my fingers, maybe because it was such a light layer. So I've added about 3 layers of color and blended with a sponge applicator, and that seemed to work very well. This paper is a product from France called Clairefontaine PastelMat. It seems to be a thick cardstock paper with a coating of cellulose fibers with a very smooth, velvety finish that I already like. My first impression of this paper is that it absorbs the pastel color and isn't creating any pastel dust that I'm used to when using my UART paper. I'm going to complete this Kingfisher by using my pastel pencils. I'm going to finish outlining the bird's head using my dark blue pastel pencil, and once I have it outlined, I'll zoom in a little closer so that you can see the details more clearly. To blend this color, I'm going to use a paper blending stump. It blends it very smoothly and pushes it into the surface of the paper. I'm using a free reference photo from a photographer, Steve Pryor, for this project. So please continue to follow as I begin developing layers of colors and bring out the vividness of the bird's feathers. I have laid down a dark base of colors to the bird's beak and head feathers. I'm going to begin using a shade of ultramarine blue for the base layer of the bird's feathers in his head. The coverage looks very good, so I will switch to a lighter shade of blue to begin shaping the feathers in this area. I am paying close attention to the direction of the feathers in his head, and once I have completed the base layer of these feathers, then I'll come back with lighter shades of color and highlights that will give the feathers great dimension and clarity. The Kingfisher has a beautiful light blue shimmer in its plumage on the top of its head. I will use a light blue and white to create that illusion of sparkle in his feathers. Although I have begun with a dark base to the bird's feathers, I'm finding that I'm able to use light shades very easily over the darker surface. The Kingfisher's small feathers will extend into the background of the paper, but until the background has been finished, I will wait to add these small details. I'm going to continue developing the background of this painting before I continue working on the back feathers and wing area of the Kingfisher. I'm going to begin adding some color to his back feathers. I'm using a shade of gray to identify some of the shadowed areas beneath his feathers. Once I've defined these shapes and shadowed areas, I can start applying some colors of blue and purple. The most iridescent feathers will be at the surface level. So depending on the angle of the light, some of the feathers will become more iridescent in the sunlight. Now that I have established the darker values in the feathers at the base layer, I can come back in with my lighter shades of blue and begin shaping them as the sun is reflecting off the surface. The lightest shade of turquoise and white is used at the very surface of each feather where the sun is reflecting off of the feather. I will come back in and define some of the shadowed areas again beneath the feathers to give them more dimension. The Kingfisher has fluffed up his feathers, so this will create more glimmer or shimmer in the very tips of the top feathers. Right now I'm going to block in and outline the bird's wings, and at this point I'm not concerned about any of the real details. I just want to get the shapes outlined and blocked in at this point. I just want to start laying down some color in the bird's wings just to make sure I'm on the right track. I primarily use the CarbOthello pastel pencils, but you can use whatever pastel pencils you have at disposal. It's not that important to have the exact color or pencil that I use, but instead come as close as you can to your reference photo. I usually work with pastel pencils and sticks on most of my paintings, but for this piece, I'm using the pastel pencils primarily for placing the bird, and I'm using the pastel sticks solely for the background. I'm also using some glassine paper beneath my hand to avoid smudging and transferring color onto my hand and possibly smearing it on my paper. However, I find that the pastel doesn't seem to smear as easily as it could on UArt paper. So PastelMat does have some benefits I like compared to using the UArt paper. I am nearly done painting the tail feathers of the Kingfisher, but I need to add some of the highlights and lighter colors to bring out that iridescent quality in his feathers again. At this point, I would like to complete the background of this painting before I continue working on the tree limb and the final details in the Kingfisher. I would like to add some greens and dark blues to the background and blend it so that it creates a cloudy, blurry effect. Again, I will use my sponge applicator to blend these first layers of color. Once I have a smooth base, I think I will come back in with a heavier application of pastel by pressing a little bit harder into the paper, and then I'm going to attempt blending with my fingertips. Since I'm new to using PastelMat, I think my application of pastels has been a little bit light, and that's why I was having some difficulty in blending the colors with my fingers. But now that I have a heavier layer of pastels, it's blending very nicely. Before I complete all the details needed in the bird, I'm going to move on and focus on the limb that the bird is sitting on. It has some great texture with light and dark shadows reflecting in the wood that has crevices and cracks in the bark of the tree limb. Adding these textures and characteristics of the limb will make it appear more believable and realistic. Now that the tree limb is done, I'll go back and do some touch-up and add the final highlights to the bird's feathers. Once I've added these final little details, I will also add the fine feathers that extend into the background of the painting. And with this process, the painting will be complete. I hope you have enjoyed this demonstration of painting a kingfisher, and I hope you join me for future lessons and demonstrations in pastel. Thank you.